In this video, I'm going to show you how to thread your machine, wind your bobbin, and test sew on your Singer Featherweight. Before we can start test sewing, we need to wind a bobbin to sew with. So you're going to need a spool of thread, a bobbin, and I would look your bobbin over if you're using an old vintage one. Make sure it's not bent anywhere. Sometimes these can be kind of pinched in. I like to start with new ones. I get them from the Singer Featherweight Shop. I know they're always going to work. So bobbin, and we'll need our bobbin case eventually. First you need to plug the machine in. So I am using a new electronic style foot control and power cord, and here is our little receptacle. And if we look at this, sort of a smiley face, and then here is sort of a smiley face. We're just going to line those up and plug it in. So now I'm going to place my spool of thread on the little spool pin up here, and this little hook here, I'm going to run it through there. And then I like to do this part kind of backwards. I go ahead and I put the thread into my bobbin. Just make sure I have enough slack. Slide the bobbin onto the pin here on the bobbin winder, and then I catch my little tension bracket down here. There we go. So it's ready to wind. Now, you do want to go ahead and engage your stop motion feature, which is this knob right here. You want to hold your hand wheel and turn it counterclockwise as far as it will go. It will bump up against a little pin in the back. That's as far as it will go. Now, technically, what that means is that your needle bar won't move up and down while you are winding your bobbin. In this case, this machine, it's not perfect yet. My needle bar might go ahead and move up and down. I just don't know. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to press my foot control to wind the bobbin. While I'm doing that, I'm going to be watching the bobbin. I'm going to be watching this thread. I want to see it travel back and forth, left and right evenly. If I see it piling up on one side, then I know I need to make an adjustment down here. But I'm just going to go ahead and start winding, and I'm going to hold on to this little tail. Oh, and press your bobbin winding arm against your hand wheel. Now you see the thread traveling? It's going evenly, left to right, left to right. Now, once you get it wound a little bit, it's okay to go ahead and trim this tail off. You don't want that making a mess. And let's just wind some more thread. Perfect. Okay, that's good enough. So if I had it piling up on one side or the other, I would take this little screw here, this screw right here, and I would loosen it, and I would slide this bracket a little bit to the left or right to adjust that winding so that it goes back and forth for me instead of just sticking to one side. But this one's perfect, don't need to do it. So we can go ahead and take this off. So just pull it off. Make sure you raise that arm back up, and you disengage the stop motion feature by holding your hand wheel and turning the stop motion knob back clockwise so it's locked up and your needle bar moves again. Now, what do we do with the bobbin? Well, we need the bobbin case, and let's look at this bobbin case for just a minute. So if you follow it along, you'll see the little cutout right here. See how this cutout runs this way? When you put your bobbin in, see how the thread is coming off of the bobbin? It's going this way, the same way as the cutout. That's wrong. Flip it over. So the thread is coming off of the bobbin the opposite direction of, there it is, your little cutout here. Opposite direction. And just set it inside. Then hold the bobbin in the case and pull that thread tail down into that cutout and let it snap all the way in between. There's a little cutout. That's where your thread's going to come to rest. Now this bobbin and case is ready to put into the machine. So let's do that. So before we put the bobbin and case back into the machine, now would be a good time to make sure that this little finger right here on our hook assembly is up between this gap in the bottom of the needle plate. Here's the gap right here. Here's the finger. It needs to be up in between there. If it's not right here, forget having a beautiful stitch. It won't happen. Make sure that that's positioned that way. If it's not, you have to undo the screws on the needle plate just enough to kind of lift it up a little bit and get that finger where it's supposed to be, and then you can tighten it back down. But anytime we work on our machines and service them, this is a common thing that as we're in a hurry to put it back together and start sewing again, we'll forget to make sure that finger is where it goes. And I think if you were following along, that is something that I didn't do early on when I was putting it back together, but it's fixed now. So we can go ahead and put the bobbin and case back in. So if we look at our bobbin case now, the thread is coming out right here. See that? You want that to point up towards that little opening there, because the thread is coming up out through this hole, the needle's coming down, the hook's going to catch it, and we're going to make our lock stitch. So to put it in, the little arm here on the bobbin, you just open it, you pull it out, and then this part's coming up, that hole is coming up, and you just slide it onto the post on the hook assembly. So now it's on. And we'll pull this up through the needle plate in a minute, but we need to thread the machine first. But this should be stable. It shouldn't just pop off. You'll feel it lock into place. So threading up the machine. We've already started. We have our thread on the spool pin up here, and we've actually put it through the first thread guide. Now we need to work it through the tension assembly. So we're going to hold onto this thread, and I like to kind of press it down against the body of the machine. And do you see this silver part right here? We're just going to run that thread along that silver part, and it's going to guide it right between the two tension discs and the tension assembly. Keeping a finger up here to hold this still. Now I'm going to start pulling up on this thread. It's going to catch onto the spring. I'm going to pull the spring all the way back, and then the thread is going to catch on this little hook right here. So let me see if I can do this so you can see. You should also hear it click. Just like that. Now, this thread has come to lay right in front of that little finger there. Right there. You see, it's behind. It's like under the spring here, but also in front of that finger. Now we can keep threading. So this thread guide right here, it goes behind there. And then through the little eye on our thread take-up system. And if it pops out of this one, just put it back in. It's not really a big deal. Now, right here is another thread guide, and it kind of just snaps behind it. If you bring it behind and pull forward, it will catch, and now it's behind the next thread guide. So before we get too much further, let's go ahead and put our needle in. So to put the needle in, the flat side goes pointing out. It matches the shape of the needle plate. See the flat spot here? Flat spot on the needle. That's how it goes into the needle clamp. And you just want to make sure you put it all the way up as far as it will go, and then tighten it down. Now, if you want to be sure you have it in right, when you look at the machine dead on, you should not see the hole for the needle. If you see the hole and it looks like you need to thread it from front to back, you put it in wrong. It should be turned so that you're going to thread it from right to left. So now we have this last little thread guide right here. Not the last one, sorry, next to last. We're going to pop it behind that, behind this little thread guide here on the needle clamp. And then finally, we can thread the needle from right to left. And there we go. So let's just review what we just did. Spool to the hook between the two tension discs, keeping the string taut so that spring pops up all the way over here, and this thread catches in front of this finger and is in this loop on the spring. Up through the eye, through this thread guide here on the nose plate, through this next to last thread guide here at the bottom, and then through this final thread guide on the needle clamp, and then right to left through the needle. So we can pull up our lower thread from the bobbin now. And you can do this with your foot up or down, it's really up to you, but I'm going to just turn my hand wheel. And let's take a look here at how this all works. Okay, so we have our bobbin thread ready to be caught. We're going to bring our needle down. It's going to come down. The hook is coming around. It's catching the thread. And do you see right here? That's going to slip over the bobbin case. These were machined so perfectly, just like that. See that? And as it comes up, there you go. So it pulled up our bobbin thread. And raise my foot up, tuck all this behind here. We can sew. Okay, so you could test sew on some paper towel, or I have lots of old fabric. These are old bed sheets that I cut up. Once they're worse for wear, I don't want to use them on my bed anymore. I cut them up and I use them for my test sewing. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to be test sewing on 2 layers of cotton. So my go-to number is 3. That's what I sew most of my quilting projects on most of the time. So I want to see the stitch at a 3. I'm going to lower my stitch length lever all the way down so it's 6 stitches per inch, because if this tension is set too tight, it's really going to show at 6 per inch. There's just a long enough stitch that it will gather pretty easily if the tension is too tight. So I'm going to pop my fabric under and lower my foot. Now, we just pulled our bobbin thread up. It worked wonderfully, but that doesn't mean that you should have a lead foot right out of the gates, because just 1 stitch around isn't enough to tell us if this is going to stitch properly. So always start slow. So I'm just putting a little bit of pressure on my foot control. Okay. First thing I notice is that I might want to increase a little bit of pressure on the presser foot. If you go to sew 6 stitches per inch and it doesn't look like you're getting 6 per inch, because you took the machine apart and put it back together, chances are you didn't put enough pressure on your presser foot. It's not pressing down on the fabric and working with the feed dogs and giving you that perfect stitch. So always add a little bit of pressure if you need to. I can tell here these stitches are fairly short, and then they did get a little bit longer. I just needed to add some pressure by turning the thumb screw up on the top. So let's go a little bit further. Oh, it sounds beautiful. Okay, let's go ahead and cut this one and see how it looks. So here we go. And you can see these stitches are just a little bit short here. That's because there wasn't enough pressure on the presser foot. But after I added pressure, look, nice consistent stitches there, very consistent. So I'm a little bit of a fanatic here, and I just want to measure and see, am I really getting 6 stitches per inch? And if I look here, I'm putting this right at the beginning of a stitch and counting 1, 2, 3, there's my 1/2 inch. Yes, that is 6 stitches per inch. So awesome job there. No more adjusting that I need to do. Let's look at the back. Some fuzz. I don't see any strange loops pulling through. And yes, if you wanted to do this with 2 colors of thread, you definitely could. That would let you see each stitch defined perfectly. But in this case, this is perfect. And the tension seems pretty good too. But just to be sure, open up your fabric and just kind of give it a tug. If you're seeing a lot of thread here in the seam, then you might want to adjust your tension a little bit. This is kind of a stretchy fabric a little bit, so I'm not really too worried about that. So let's try some of the other sizes of stitch. So I'll put my foot down. I'm going to keep the tension here. Let's move it up to what would be about 8 stitches per inch. Look at how straight it runs on its own. Very little need to control. Bump it up a little bit more. And then let's turn the corner. And we'll turn the corner again. And let's try like almost 30. I want to see how the stitch looks whenever it's just making teeny tiny stitches. Doesn't it sound beautiful? There's no clunking, clicking. The motor is pretty quiet. All right, let's check that out. Okay. Wow, I hope you can see what I see. So here we started out, it was around 8. This transitioned to the 10, and that's like the almost 30. But look, there's no puckering or pulling in the fabric. And the back side is gorgeous. And where you really will notice if you have issues with the tension is here on these stitches that are a little bit finer and closer together. That's where the upper thread pulling through to the bottom would really show up. So I look at this with a magnifying glass. I make sure that it's working properly. As far as I can tell, this machine is stitching beautifully. If you went to do your test sew and you didn't get 6 stitches per inch on the 6 setting, remember, go ahead, turn this little knob right here, put a little bit more pressure on the foot between the fabric and the feed dogs. That's going to help you out. If you were at a 3 and a 6 and you sewed this and it was gathered and tight, then you would want to see what happens when you back it down to a 2. Does it fix the problem? If so, what you could do is put your tension back to 0 and push this knob in, and then turn this knob counterclockwise 1 hole, 1 click, and see if that fixes the problem for you. Just adjust it 1 hole at a time until you get it set the way you want it. Each machine's a little bit different, and whenever you are using the original spring that came with your machine, the springiness is unique as well. So you don't always have to replace these springs, but you just need to know how to fine-tune your tension. So, congratulations. I hope that you had a fantastic sewing experience. Everything is working correctly. If your machine's making some funny noises right now, make sure you've oiled it properly. Then another thing I like to do is if I'm hearing any knocking, is I will run the machine without thread and without the foot down. So no thread, leave the foot up, but I'll run the machine and I put my fingers here on the needle plate and just feel with my fingers if I am feeling the feed dogs bumping the underside of the needle plate. A lot of times you can pick up on that just by resting your fingers here. If you're feeling that and you're hearing a noise, you may need to make sure that you don't need to adjust your feed dogs forward or backward a little bit so they're not hitting part of the needle plate as they're coming up and going back down. So this was a milestone. We have one step left, and of course that's to put the bed extension on and wrap everything up. I am so excited for all of you who have followed along this far. Thank you for putting your trust in me, and thank you for asking questions when they come up. I can't think of everything that's going to happen as you're restoring your machine. Some things are random, just like this issue I'm having with the hand wheel right now and the stop motion feature not always working. You don't have the same problem with every machine. So we'll see each other again really soon. Thanks again for watching. Bye.